we've seen frankly, the birth of generative AI really take place in the last year, right? I mean, it's really caught on to people's consciousness. I think people are using now tools like ChatGPT, which is bringing awareness in the community. So I think there's no question it plays a really key role in business today.
Steven Yannelli is the head of information technology at Vishay Intertechnology and a results-driven technology executive with over 20 years of experience leading complex projects and delivering high-performance technology solutions. Throughout his career at brands such as Walmart, CSL, the National Army Guard, and Deloitte, he has consistently aligned IT teams with business goals and delivered measurable impact.
In certain jobs and certain roles where people are using generative AI to help accelerate their work, I think they're just becoming more productive through that process, right? And that's essential. I mean, we can't undervalue productivity in today's world.
All right. Hi, everyone. Today we are joined by a powerhouse in global technology. We have Steve Yannelli, VP and Head of IT at Vishay Technology. He has held various IT leadership roles in Fortune 500 companies and has worked on some of the most complex digital transformation initiatives in the world. Steve, glad to have you with us. Do you mind giving us a quick introduction?
Thanks so much, Sumit, for having me. I really appreciate it. Quick introduction of myself. I'm the head of IT, as you mentioned, at Vishay. A little bit about our company, right? So Vishay is a manufacturer of high quality electronics components, right? We produce semiconductors and we call passive electronics components, which are really all the power management bits and bobs that go onto a circuit board, capacitors, resistors, sensors, those types of things. So I'm happy to join you today and looking forward to the podcast. Thank you.
Awesome. So maybe we can get started with a recap from Gartner. We are both there, and this time around, it seemed like the Gartner analysts were much more pragmatic than last year, right? Where everyone was carried away with the hype. So I guess what's your perspective in terms of real versus hype with respect to generative AI applications right now?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question. So I mean, there's no question that it's becoming more real as days and weeks and months go on, right? We've seen the frankly, the birth of generative AI really take place in the last year, right? I mean, it's really caught on to people's consciousness. I think people are using now tools like ChatGPT, which is bringing awareness in the community. So I think there's no question it plays a really key role in business today. And what helped that and it helped accelerate that is Microsoft's partnership with OpenAI GPT-5, where they're offering now the GPT engine behind Copilot, right? This is a game changer, right? And our company is really starting to dig in and use those tools. I know a lot of our peer companies are doing the same thing. They're extremely powerful tools. So I think, although we are at the peak of a hype cycle, I think there will be some normalization of that, but I think it will level out and companies are really going to try to dig in and figure out meaningful use cases for interactive slash generative AI.
Yeah, I mean that figuring out part. I would love to hear, like, you lead IT in like a massive global company, right? And uh you guys, like, when you implement projects, right? I'm sure you guys are thinking of ROI. What ROI do I get from this? So how do you think of ROI for generative AI applications?
So our ROI is a little difficult to measure. I mean, we can look at a number of different metrics. Specifically for generative AI, I think it makes people more efficient, which is a really difficult thing to measure, right? And it's also difficult to measure what they're doing with the time savings, right? If somebody saves 20 minutes for not having to write a job description, what are they doing with that 20 minutes? They're returning that to high value, meaningful work. It's an incredibly difficult metric to measure. I think in certain jobs and certain roles where people are using generative AI to help accelerate their work, I think they're just becoming more productive through that process, right? And that's essential. I mean, we can't undervalue productivity in today's world, right? And I think in general, if you look across the industry, people are really being asked to do more with less, right? And this is a great tool for that. And I think we've seen a lot of tools come through throughout the years over that, right? Generative AI is the latest, but if you look at the Microsoft Office suite, that made it much faster for people to go from a typewriter where they had to rewrite the entire page after every issue to a Microsoft Word document, right? It made people more efficient. People could recover from any errors that they typed in very quickly, right? And those types of technologies will continue to develop. Generative AI, shifting into agentic AI is a more powerful tool where you're taking action based on certain criteria and learning, active learning. So I think it really, this is one of many tools that have come in rapid succession really in the last few years that have really been impressive.
And can you maybe tell us about some of the projects or problems you guys are thinking of solving with generative AI?
Sure. Yeah. So just a little back to the company and what we're known for, right? Let's start with that because I think that'll help shape, some of the interesting problems we're trying to solve with AI, right? We are known in the electronics component industry as a high quality manufacturer, right? That's very, very important to us. Our parts go into everything from spaceships to vehicles to submarines, right? We have a very wide variety of use cases that our products go into that require a very high degree of trust and quality, right? So where we begin to unpack who we are as a company, right? Quality is really at the top of that list. So any AI that we can add to enhance the quality, to make sure that our parts will function properly in the extreme austere conditions they're used in, are really important, to us as a company to improve our quality and also to help not only in quality inspection, but to make sure our parts are produced with higher yield rates, right? In manufacturing, there's always this tug of war kind of between how many widgets you produce and how high a quality they are, right? And we're on the left side of that equation, right? We truly care about our parts quality. Lives depend on the quality of our parts. So where we begin to look at interesting AI functionality around imagery and analysis of imagery in the quality inspection process, it's very interesting to us, right? In addition, where we look at a holistic customer experience, I think there's a lot of opportunity in the industry to provide a holistic customer experience, right? Finding that happy medium of interacting with our customers to understand what they're looking for, to get them what they're looking for, whether that's a generative AI solution or an agent that can help them in a first level analysis of an issue, right? That's extremely interesting to us as well. We're looking to improve our customer experience. And we could do that in many ways through many different technologies, but AI is really promising in that space. There are a lot of really interesting agentic aspects of that are coming into the fold. And I think really, it's just the beginning of what it's capable of.
That makes sense. I think the two things you talked about. One was about around OT and manufacturing and high quality assurance, right? The other thing is around customers and customer experience, right? For uh, manufacturing companies, a lot of times, you know, you quality is important and the quality of product is important and your efficiency is important. But how does generative AI fit into those use cases?
Yeah, it's interesting. So, our customers are looking for data sheets for our products, right? We have a wide array of products, roughly 2.5 million different products. Each one of those products, might be a slight variation of the same product, right? They're all not all completely unique products, right? But we're a design engineer. So our customers are design engineers. They're designing a piece of hardware for a specific use case. It might be a navigation system for an airplane. It might be an auto driving system for a car, right? And so they're interested to see if our products meet their use case. And to do that, they need a lot of information about our products, a lot of really good high quality information, right? And we want to make sure they find it, right? And a lot of that data is unstructured data, right? At the end of the day, so where we can provide our distributors better information about our product, where we can provide our end customers better information about our product, we're going to be more successful as a company in putting that in their hands at the right time during the decisioning process to play at those tables, right? So that's extremely important to us, and that's how we're going to be successful.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. And how would you measure ROI for a project like this?
Yeah, so ROI, we can use a number of different metrics for ROI, and in some cases, there's not a direct line, right? Where we deploy things like Copilot, it's very difficult to measure, right? But where we deploy things on the manufacturing floor, it becomes, other KPIs come into play, right? So we've got defects per unit, for example, the overall equipment effectiveness, right? Scrap rate, downtime. All these are very well known and highly measured metrics in a manufacturing facility, right? Where we get to the IT side of things, if we really kind of go down the road of, okay, what type of metrics do we use to ensure our customers in the business are satisfied? Well, that becomes a little more difficult. Some of that's subjective, but there are other KPIs we can use to measure the effectiveness of those measures. Mean time to closure is a good example, right? We could take a lot of normal flow business and produce an intelligent capability that can get people faster responses at the end of the day, right? So they can continue their work on the line in finance, right, in any area of the organization.
That makes a lot of sense. Um, Now, when you take a project like this, say getting more information, helping your customers get more information about the products you offer, how do you go and pitch it to the board in terms of, or the executive team in terms of ROI and why it will be useful to the company? Because at the end of the day, like, I'm sure you'll be spending money to implement this, right? And you, there's three traditional ways you measure ROI, right? You have either help you make more money, help you cut cost savings, or productivity, right? Which of these three do you go to the board with, or which combination?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. So our executive committee is very invested in improving customer experience, right? It's been very, very clear that that's extremely important for our company and is going to dictate how we do going forward the market, right? So I think for specific use cases, I think some of it is fairly clear, right? If we can help our end customers find what they need better, right? If they can order it in a smoother, more automated fashion, right? If they can interact with us more rapidly than they do today, right, we're going to be more successful, right? And so where we look to place chips on some of those bets, right, all that's factored in consideration. Our executive team is more than aware and very supportive of enhancing the capabilities we have in these areas.
Going back to going from the customer experience back to the manufacturing floor, right? Uh, What are you guys looking at there? Are there even any generative AI based use cases around improving efficiency on the floor, the quality, or would you say that's more traditional AI?
So we're looking at a number of different solutions on our manufacturing floors, right? So on the manufacturing floor, there's a number of different systems that have to play well together, right? And we want to make sure we have the basics of those connections working flawlessly, right? There are opportunities to overlay AI on top of that, but I think interestingly, what you hinted at early in the presentation is quality of data is extremely important in that process, right? Overlaying any system on lesser quality data is not a recipe for success, right? So we have we along with other companies have spent a lot of time, a lot of energy, and a lot of money, frankly, on getting their data right, and that's super important to us. So if we look at short term versus long term targets, we have to get the data right, and there's data that exists in a lot of different pockets of the manufacturing business, right? You have manufacturing data coming off your MES. You have enterprise, back office data coming from, typically an ERP system. All this data, you have to pull it all together and make sense of it, right? And then on top of that, you can overlay capabilities, right? You heard it at Gardner, some of the interesting agentic capabilities to be able to take all that data, distill it down to decisioning, right, which AI is now capable of. And obviously some of those decisions require human interaction still. A lot of them do, right? But I think if once these models are trained a little bit better, you can make more advanced analytical decisions, right? We're going to be able to do predictive maintenance and predictive analytics, right? These are things that machine learning kind of laid the groundwork for, but it only laid the groundwork in terms of us understanding, right? Now with generative AI, we can begin to create content, and then agentic AI is really taking us into that next level of being actually able to action that and act effectively on that. And that's a really interesting shift in the paradigm of AI now, right? Because we have that capability. I think it just depends on how, what part on the sliding scale companies are interested in investing, right? On the left side of that, you see IT as sort of a back office contributor, right? On the right side of that, you see IT as an innovator that can enable your business, right? So we're trying to slide that scale to the top right as much as we can, and really help make our business a leader in this space.
Let's go back to the data problem. Can you talk a little bit more to our audience, maybe about why is data so fragmented and siloed in manufacturing companies? This
Yeah.
seems like, this has been a problem for like decades now, right? And we keep hearing the same problem, and companies are starting to do better data governance. But historically, why is it such a big problem?
So in my experience, data discrepancies and variance happens for a few different reasons, right? So a company can struggle with this if they've acquired many companies over many years, right? It's typically, it's less of an issue if you get to start from scratch and you get to build a clean database. And I think, that can be good. Obviously, the governance of that data becomes important, and how you manage it and who owns it, right, is another important topic. Ownership of data is essential to the success of any data program. But I think what you see over time, where companies, acquire other companies, and they bring them into the fold, but they don't fully integrate them, right? Their ERP systems may be different, their MES systems may be different. They typically don't communicate with each other, right? Because they're still run as a separate entity, right? So bringing these types of acquisitions under one roof, and the way that you do that is extremely important, because if you do eventually get to a core with normalized data, or you're able to overlay some sort of effective obfuscation layer over that and pull everything up into something that can make sense of a broad array of, data elements. I think really it depends on, how far the company wants to go. Sometimes it's unrealistic to bring everybody under one roof, right? But I think, that's essential, right? And that's the root cause in many cases of data discrepancy. I think governance, now on a different topic, I think any data set, whether you're looking at 10 items in a sheet, or whether you're looking at millions of items in a customer master, right? The cleanliness of that data is super important, and preventing duplication of that data, keeping it high quality, making sure addresses are maintained properly and they make sense. I mean, all of this is seems like it's basic blocking and tackling, but over time, if it's neglected, you tend to see a reduction of data quality, which will be very obvious when you get to centralized reporting. When you try to connect reporting tools to it, you're just going to get garbage if you put garbage in. So I think having a healthy back office, right? It starts with a fundamental consolidation layer, right? Layered on top of that is a strong, data lake where you can normalize that data if you do have different data sources. And then on top of that is an effective, really reporting suite of tools that's used really in a standard set of ways, right? For instance, so Power BI, for example, is a very very popular, very a lot of people use Power BI. They love it, right? But it plays well in the ad hoc reporting game, right? You have other technologies, SAP Analytics Cloud being one of them, that's great for mass consumption of reports. So if you want to provide a financial report out to the business, right, that's a great tool for that. And there's others. Databricks is coming out with some interesting offerings. There's a million reporting tools, but you have to channel the demand into the correct reporting tools to get the standardization and the quality that you're looking for, right? Because you want to develop the same report in three different tools. That's a waste of time, right? So I
Yeah,
think from
it
bottom
seems
top,
like,
having
data,
clean data
if
is
done
essential.
right, can be a massive boost, right? Once you have that data lake, once you have that normalized data, once you have your fabric layer, w- do you think there is opportunities for these any new companies, new startups to come in where you think the big players have been ignoring it for a while?
I think some of the big players are a little bit late to the game in some cases. I think, some of the bigger players should have adopted AI earlier. However, I've seen a lot of catching up in the last year. If you look at what SAP has done, for example, if you look at what Salesforce has done, they're investing very heavily in that because, again, there's competitors in the market that are, we'll call them ankle biters, right? They they want to kind of grab market share from the bigger players. They're coming up and they're rising very rapidly. And in this world of AI first, and you hear a lot of companies talk through some of their solutions, you really have to kind of peel back the onion a little bit and assess what the AI companies have beneath the hood, right? Do they have a technology? Is their product PowerPoint slides, right, where they're providing services over other product, right? And you really have to be critical of what their capabilities are, because I think the sales cycle sometimes overtakes the reality of what they can deliver, right? So where I look to partner with AI companies, I look for established companies. Obviously, AI is relatively new in the world, so establishment doesn't mean 10 years of experience. It might mean two, right? But I think it's important to have a good foothold, to understand, and to then assess technology against what's going to exist in a couple of years, because you kind of have to place some bets. There are some new shiny tools that are phenomenal. Are they going to be available to market? Are they going to be acquired by bigger fish? I mean, these are all questions that you have to take a little risk on and ask yourself a lot of questions. From an enterprise application standpoint, some of the big players are coming out with really interesting product, right? We see SAP's AI innovation really getting into high gear. There's some interesting use cases in the back office for things like Joule integrated, right? I saw a demo of Joule at Sapphire, I think it was last year even, where you told it what report you wanted it to develop, and it just developed the report for you on the fly, right? That could cut down, a ton of development time, right? We have teams of people building these reports and deploying these reports, right? If we can achieve, a verbal interaction with a reporting system, I we'd really benefit our business, right? Because they could ask it questions without tying up time for a report developer that should be working on validation reports and financial reports and making sure they're right and accurate, right? So it's an interesting game, and it's changing every day.
And so you talked about, PowerPoint companies, which is another way to say wrapper companies, right? Versus deep technology companies, right? Uh, how do you think about those two? I'm very curious. Like, how do you think about uh, where who adds value in what use case? Like, would
Yeah,
you
I,
say
I, I think
Microsoft
it.
in a way is a PowerPoint company because they they use OpenAI in the background?
Well, I think there's product there though, and I expect that product to develop over time, right? So I mean, a lot of companies, that we speak with, right? They overlay services over tools that are either open source, publicly available, or we have to purchase on the side, right? We know that, and look, I think it depends on your use case, how big you are, what your budget looks like. Maybe they're best for you, but I prefer established players in the market. I prefer product with a services layer layered over top, right? An integrated experience, because like a lot of other software applications, you have to be very careful where you place your chips, right? And anything that you implement, you also have to support, right? And so if we place our chips on a company that doesn't exist in a year, right? Are we going to be able to get the support? Are we going to be able to continue to get value out of that investment, right? And it's unlikely, right? So I think trying to place your chips on the right horse is a difficult decision. I think Copilot does have product, and I expect that product actually to grow substantially. There's so much more they can do with Copilot with the right partnerships, and it looks like they're signing the right deals with the right partners at this point, based on my perspective, right? But it's going to continue to grow. I think Copilot has the potential to integrate it with a lot of other data sources as well, right? And it can already at some level, to varying degrees of work to get this set up, right? But I think it can tap into a lot more commercial data sources than it is today to provide a lot more value to business executives. And I expect to see that over time. Is that going to be the only agent? Is that going to be the only generative AI tool we use? Probably not, right? There's a lot of use cases that would say, hey, maybe a tool from a hyperscaler, maybe a chatbot traversing across a number of different systems can provide a lot of value, right? But I mean, where I think about its capability, I think it's at the beginning stages of actual meaningful product deployment, and it's already very good.
That makes sense. Um, data leads to security around data, cybersecurity, right? So,
Yep.
how do you think of cybersecurity in this age of agentic workflows, right? Where
Yeah.
people like your employees used to have access to a lot less information than they do now with all these agents.
Yeah, so it's interestingly, I think you're familiar with tools like Sora, the video generation tool where you scan your head and you say a number of words and it kind of captures that, and then you feed it prompts, and you can put yourself, make a video of yourself running down the beach, right, or something like that, right? These are technologies that are in their infancy, and it's going to create a next level of deepfakes and fraud, right? And potential, risks for companies, right? I mean, it's one thing. I think it started in chat, and I think there's a lot of fraud happening in the chat space where somebody impersonates somebody else based on everything the internet knows about you, right? They're getting better with voice technology, and it won't be long, kind of before you don't need to train it, right? That it trains itself based on public information on you, and that's a scary thing. It's a scary thing for companies. It's a scary thing for individuals, and people really need to be mindful and validate, and have a level of segregation of duties and financial controls around some of these social engineering risks that are only going to get better over time. And so, we were just talking actually in a SEO conference that I attended a couple days ago, and the advent of this technology requires a different level of training. It's not good enough that we train people not to click on clickbait in emails. I think people understand that at a certain level. People still fall, victim to it occasionally, but I think people understand that. I think training on deepfakes is something we need to address, and we need to address quickly, because it won't be long really before Sora takes, instead of it taking 15 seconds to generate a video, it'll be done in a tenth of a second, right? And so you can be on a Teams call with somebody that looks like me, that's has my voice, and is not actually me, right? So it's an interesting risk surface that I don't think anyone's really begun to dig in and address yet. And from a technology perspective, there's very little we can do to prevent those types of things, right? So I think it's education's important. I think, really bringing people along the journey of, hey, here's what's out there. If you see something that looks, off or strange, or the CEO, shows a video of himself asking to wire money to a certain acquisition target, that this is what's out there, and this is what people are capable of, right? So it's, education's key in this space. I think technology is going to lag a little bit.
What are you guys doing in terms of education and educating your employee? What plans do you have?
Yeah, so interesting. We have a full suite security awareness program led by a very strong individual who's really has his name and face out in the business, has a great relationship with our business. He's doing a great job. We have a comprehensive security program. We train people around, common phishing attempts, those types of things. They're required to take training, different languages, different parts of the country. So we have a fairly significant security awareness program, and then we do send out bulletins on a monthly basis to say, hey, here's some new trends coming up. Here's what to be aware of. Here's what to look out for. So people are not only trained once and our job is done, right? They're trained on an ongoing basis, and it's more of a conversation.
That's interesting. Have you are there companies that you see trying to tackle the deepfake problem? Especially, I can see your point. Like somebody can just show up to a meeting, right,
Yeah,
and look like me. Maybe this podcast is not you, but we
maybe
it
maybe it's
could
all
be.
AI.
It could be, right? Have you
Yeah.
seen companies try to tackle this problem?
So no, this is a fairly new area. I think Sora in general is fairly new, as well as some of the capabilities. I think parts and pieces and parts of that had existed before. Imagery I think is one that's been around for a long time, taking somebody's image and superimposing it on some other person. But it's a fairly new development field. So I don't believe I don't know of any technology out there to prevent this type of thing, because you can send a video really through any channel. It won't be long before somebody figures out how to take off a Sora watermark, right? I think it's going to be an increasing problem, and I think it comes down to an individual decision, right? We need to give people the tools and arm them with the tools to make the right decisions, and we need to have the financial protections in place, right? There should never be a scenario where a video of a CEO asks you to wire funds, and with no other verification protection is that money wired outside of your bank account, right? I mean, obviously, it sounds obvious. Fraud does happen, right? It does happen in industry, but having good segregation of duties and good financial controls will prevent a lot of that stuff, even if it does make it to a concept phase, won't actually go, right? And that's extremely important.
Makes sense. Uh, let's go back to a point we were talking about earlier on IT going from back office to business leaders and driving innovation across departments by helping them implement AI projects, right? AI projects that help with productivity, help with ROI for that business, right? That business department. So, how do you think CIOs should be looking at it for in terms of moving IT from back office to business value, adding business value across the company?
Yeah, so this is a subject I'm passionate about. As you know, I've long worked on business transformation projects, and really the way I approach it is through partnership, right? So my job is really to be a sounding board for a lot of these things, because I don't have a monopoly on good ideas. So no longer are the heads of IT coming up with the next best solution for manufacturing, right? Because the manufacturing leads are the individuals that go to conferences and they talk to their peers and they find interesting technology, and they have needs, or we call demand, right? They have an interest. And so I see my job as channeling that through to a set of tools so that they can achieve what they want to achieve, right? And that requires a lot of partnership, right? You see a lot of IT organizations where IT is just a ticket taker, right? You throw a ticket over a fence, and we throw a solution back, right? I think the world is blending, is requiring us to blend IT and really get out get out to your business units, walk the plant floor, see what the issues are, understand what the process is, and then understand how we can apply technology to help with that process. And that's a two-way dialogue. That's not a throw a ticket over the fence and get a response, right? And it's a different way of thinking as well, right? How can we use technology to improve, customer service, to improve, the financial metrics of our company, right? These are whole different conversations that I enjoy, frankly, having with our executive leadership team. We speak the same language, and that's critically important. I think IT is moving from a more commoditized set of responsibilities to a strategic enabling organization. And to do that, you need to have good leaders that can speak both languages, right? So that's what I look for throughout my teams. I look for leaders who are fluent in the language of the business they support, right? That understand how their technology applies, understand what the priorities are for the company, and then pull that all the way back in through a superior delivery mechanism. I'll tell you, I have seen the benefits of agile transformation. Um, we're really looking to bring a lot of those tenets and implement them where I am today, and aligning technology with the business units. That's extremely important to me personally. I feel like if a technologist can see the whole process, they understand exactly where they fit in the puzzle, and they can adjust their piece of the puzzle to make sure it makes sense for the bigger picture, right? Technology organizations that have siloed teams that work on small bits and bobs of processes, typically they don't do as well, right? If you give somebody a task, right, and they can't complete that task, everything stops, right? But if you give people the intent of what you're looking to achieve, right, they can navigate around a lot of those fairly challenging roadblocks, and they can get to a better result than you had originally envisioned, right? And so that's what I expect of my leadership team. That's what we are looking for. And I've told every business leader, I said, look, I am a sounding board, right? Please engage me. I want to have a conversation. And the word no is kind of been stricken from our vocabulary. And instead, what we do is we take all of the requests, or we call demand, right? And we prioritize that demand. So it's not a no. In some cases we're just going to choose not to pursue things, right? We are going to look at the prioritization of that, and we're going to say no to some things because we can't possibly do everything that people want us to do. But we can achieve delivery for the high value components of that demand list, right? And we can understand when they could be delivered. We should remove the red tape from beginning those projects and push them all the way through to completion. So that in that same thread, right, where I look at AI technology, that fits directly into that mold. The team supporting AI, whether it's consulting, whether it's internal employees, need to understand the business process. They need to be free of red tape and unnecessary approvals and things that encumber teams not to be successful, right? And they need to begin an actual method of delivery. And agile is a great way to do that. I think there was a time and place for waterfall. I think there is still a time and place for waterfall in some organizations based on what you develop. But I think at the end of the day, it's all about making sure the business gets what they need to make the business itself successful.
That makes sense. One thing you talked about is that demand list, right?
Mhm.
And to come up with that list of demands, like a lot of companies in this AI age are starting what they call center of excellence for AI. Uh, how do you feel about that? Do you guys have a center of excellence? Do you guys have plans for a center of excellence where you bring a bunch of leaders for each individual business units and you guys brainstorm together?
So we're going through. We're going to begin having this conversation. So we're fairly early on in talking about the AI Center of Excellence. We don't officially have a team for AI as a Center of Excellence today, but I think there's a couple areas that you need to support when you begin on the journey of AI, right? You really need a governance committee, right? Typically a blend of legal, compliance, the business, IT, right? Everyone should have a seat at the table in that to determine the governance guardrails of what we're putting in. That's extremely important, right? I think they need to have operational teams, and then they need to have somebody who can translate business requirements into IT requirements, right? And it's not purely requirements. I need people who speak both languages. Really is who I need in those teams. So whether we call it a center of excellence, whether we call it somebody who is an expert in a business process, right? I think I kind of need the latter, right? I really need people to understand AI and how to implement AI, right? But I also need people that can translate. And so I think it's a blend, and we are designing now, an operating model that's going to make us successful in that space.
Makes sense. So for the last part of this podcast, we do something called a rapid fire round where I'll be asking you 5 questions, and for each question, you can't take more than 10 seconds to reply. Sounds
Sure.
good?
Yep. Go for it.
All
That's fine.
right. What's the number one red flag you see in an AI pitch?
I think that it's going to achieve more than overselling. I think, to summarize, overselling the product.
Okay. What is overselling? I'm curious. Like, what is the biggest red flag you have seen personally?
Sure. So I think there's a misconception that AI is just going to turn AI on, you walk away, and it does everything perfectly, right? AI is not perfect, as we know. I think that was very clear in the Gartner conference. I think it's been clear in a lot of other conferences. It's not a perfect science, right? And so you need to apply AI to areas that where perfection isn't required.
Is AI making people lazier or more strategic?
I think lazy and strategic actually go hand in hand, right? I mean, any good IT person, that knows how to leverage technology is going to use it to make their job easier. So I don't see that as laziness, right? Is it lazy for me to use Copilot to help create a job description? I don't think it is, because that's not. I mean, I'm responsible for the product, but if I could be more efficient delivering that product, why not?
What's the worst buzzword in AI right now?
I think there's a misunderstanding of agentic. I think there's a lot of misconception of what agentic is and does. So I think that's a buzzword that I there's a lot of misconception in the marketplace on that.
What's the best AI tool you have personally used?
Personally, I think the generative AI pieces and parts are really interesting. You know, Copilot, ChatGPT, I've been very impressed, and I've tested it across a number of different surfaces. You know, personally, professionally, they're excellent tools, but they need guardrails, and we need to make sure that we're educating people on what you can and can't put in those tools in terms of confidential company information.
What's one thing you believe about AI that most people don't?
I think AI is going to accelerate a lot more rapidly than we all think, especially in the consumer space. I think there's going to be a lot of interesting social media and other video related AI software tools introduced more rapidly than we think.
Sounds good. Steve, that was great. Thanks a lot for your time.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks so much for having me.